answer to the question of how Australia can help post-conflict countries is for us to think about shifting from a paradigm of expertise, which we've been very comfortable with for a long time, towards a paradigm of solidarity. And that implies, I think, a number of sort of do's and don'ts, which seem quite straightforward, but are actually quite difficult for agencies like AusAid, accountable to people like us, to realise. I think there's a list of do's and don'ts that I'm going to leave you with, which I think arise from this, and perhaps we can discuss whether what the kinds of dilemmas that these are likely to raise. In terms of don'ts, we don't assume that we know the answers. Don't assume all post-conflict countries are the same. Don't assume that expertise is more important than leadership or opposition. Don't assume that leaders have the coalitions and networks in place that they need to get things done, particularly if we've put them in that leadership position. Do's. Do remember that every workable plan is a compromise and that the space needs to be there for those compromises to be made. The rigid and sort of doctrinaire application of policy prescriptions causes immense difficulties for politicians attempting to build support. Do remember that too much external direction stifles political accommodation. And do remember that leaders need those coalitions of support if they're going to get anything done. And that means they need to spend as much time talking to their own people as they need to spend talking to us. And the implications of those do's and don'ts are that we have to think about aid in fundamentally different ways. I think in terms of building relationships rather than achieving outcomes, prioritising accountability to locals rather than accountability to ourselves, and prioritising building sorry, I've said that twice, and letting the receivers of aid set the agenda, even if we don't like what they come up with. This is difficult, and I think we have to be prepared to either put up with outcomes of which we disapprove, or think about withdrawing or supporting, perhaps, alternative groups in that case. These dilemmas are increasingly real for aid agencies all over the world operating in post-conflict environments, but what I think we need to accept as Australians in Australia who are funding some of these aid agencies is that this is a dilemma that we have to be prepared to face too, and we have to think about what we want our relationship with people in post-conflict countries to look like.